So Nigeria's Air Force says it's carried out an airstrike in the northwest region around Kaduna State, wiping out an armed gang and freeing dozens of hostages. In a statement, it said a gang leader known as Alhaji Shanono was having a meeting with his foot soldiers in a village in Kaduna State when they were hit by a hail of bullets. 18 gangsters were killed, including Alhaji Shanono himself. 26 hostages escaped as a result. The Nigerian Air Force's Director of Public Relations and Information, Air Commodore Edward Capt, said the plane's pilot made sure there were no civilians nearby, after which he got the authorization to strike. He said similar strikes were also undertaken in the northeast as infighting was underway between militants of the Boko Haram Shekau faction and those with the Islamic State of West Africa group, or ISWAP. So how much of an impact are these strikes having on the course of the multi-pronged conflicts with bandits, rampaging criminal gangs and militant groups? And how much do we know about what actually happened during this particular airstrike? Well, to attempt to find out, I'm joined now in the studio by the National Security Consultant, Policy Analyst and former Air Force Group Captain Sadiq Shehu. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Shehu, for joining us. So the Nigerian Air Force scoring some successes in Kaduna State and in the northwest and Borno State in the northeast. What's your reading of that?
Well, I will say it's very good news. And you will recall that even a few days back, apart from this strike in Kaduna, we had another similar strike in the northeast, where one Alhaji Modu, an ISIS leader, was also killed. Then we had another success around the Zamfara Katsina axis, where another bandit leader by name Facha, that is his nickname, was killed, and then this. So definitely, this is a bright ray of sunshine that is coming instead of the normal doom and gloom that we hear. So it is something to be, to be applauded, something to celebrate, especially as according to Nigerian Air Force, there were no civilians that were killed as a result of this. The application of air power in, in the kind of irregular warfare we have, where the enemy most often is embedded with the civilians, is a very tricky one. A small error, you might kill bandits, but then you kill also, many other innocent, and that's not desirable. So this is a very good thing, and the fact that we had a clean operation without collateral damage to civilians is something to be applauded. The only thing is that we want to see more of this, and people maybe should start asking, why are we not seeing more of this?
Well, that's the question I was going to ask you. Do you see these as isolated successes for the security agencies, or is this the beginning of their having a decisive impact on the course of this conflict?
Well, here I can only speculate because I'm not privy to the discussion, but you see these three successes, they came, I can say, a few days after the last parley that the president had with the service chiefs, even though we are not privy to what was discussed there. So, but if you allow me, I could speculate and say probably maybe, he sounded a very serious note of warning, and then we've started seeing, and it should continue like that. It should continue like that. Whoever you give work, you also have to be putting him on a tight leash to see that results are accomplished. That's what I can say on that.
But of course, we have the benefit of your experience as an Air Force man, former Air Force, and as a group captain. Some people have cast doubt on the information released by the Air Force. They're suggesting that it is difficult, if not impossible, for an aircraft that's high up in the sky to be able to differentiate between militants and their kidnapped victims and be able to target just the militants and allow the civilian victims to escape. I mean, you were in the Air Force. Do you agree with that analysis?
Well, apart from the fact that I was in the Air Force, I did some flying myself, even though I didn't drop projectiles from the sky. And more importantly, I'm an instructor on what is called targeting. That's how do you select the target, what weapon are you going to use. Well, people generally, not only in this, I always say there is this issue of lack of trust between Nigerians and the government. The Air Force represents the government. So you could not really prevent such this thing. But you asked me how I'll answer this in general.
Yeah.
How does a pilot or how does a service like the Air Force confirm that it has hit what is going to hit? First, if you read in the report even released by the airport, some people passed a message that these people are going to meet. Remember, these bandits, they interact.
So intelligence was critical.
So intelligence is credible. And with due respect, again, there was element of luck, because it is not always that you will have a group of bandits seated in one area, which makes it difficult. You might find them seated in one area, but it might be a market. It might be near a primary school. A good pilot cannot release his weapon because the proximity to other innocent people. So that is the first step. You get an intelligence that they are going to be there. Now, how do you ensure that it is only them you hit? Again, so many things go into it. There's what is called the sensitive target approval request. Again, in that report, if you read, there are a part which says after getting clearance.
Absolutely.
Because the pilot will use his map reading. They will tell him that the location, he would have done his map reading while on the ground. They are on this grid reference, latitude this, or this GPS location. So he will use his aircraft and move and make sure that he's over there. But a well-trained pilot, even over there, because things change. What I'm saying, you could have gotten information. Now, this is the tricky part of it. You could have gotten information at 10:00 that the bandit and his people are going to meet. It could be the call of the meeting from the time you plan your flight and go. So having that in mind, you arrive at the place, you still have to do some reconnaissance to confirm that what you are going to hit is there. There are so many, what the law of war requires is that you do all feasible, you take all feasible precautions to ensure what you are hitting is a legitimate target. That is to say, you are hitting the bad guys, not the good guys. Sometimes, some of the tactics that pilots use, for example, if it is in the afternoon, and the target is near a primary school. Primary children go to school during daytime. You can take your attack in the afternoon or in the evening, because now you see that's one of the precautions. They are taking precautions. Schools are closed. Market nearby are closed. Only the bad guys are there. And when you come now, apart from the fact that you did your map reading and arrived at point X, you still have to come low. Of course, there is danger in that, because again, if the person has anti-aircraft, he could take you. But a good pilot will still take that risk and come low so that he has visual identification. If you have a good working system, even on the ground, either from the police or from the Air Force or from the Army, you have what is called a forward air controller. He can use flares. You see below flares, 50 meters to my right, that's where the target is. So that he doesn't go too close to target, because you cannot be hit. Right. So all these are guidance that you will take. But having said all that, people need to understand that sometimes collateral damage is inevitable. But what is required of a professional military man is to take all feasible precautions to reduce the possibility of collateral damage. Now, even after doing everything, collateral damage must still happen. Then what do? You do a balancing. What is the positive military advantage you are going to get versus the expected collateral damage? To be honest with you, if it happens that it's a high value target and the advantage you get is very big, even if you take a couple of one or two people, I mean, it's allowed. Unfortunate for the person who happens to be at the wrong time, at the wrong place. But all this is, I'm just telling you what happens.
Yes, I
so there are processes.
The considerations.
And again, in another of not hitting the target, even the type of aircraft that you use matters. If you use an aircraft that flies relatively low, some aircraft, jet engine aircraft cannot come low. You understand? That's why they fly very high. If you use an aircraft that flies very low and flies relatively slow, it again gives the pilot the ability to really confirm what I am seeing on the ground is what I'm going to hit. And then the choice of the weapon. Aircraft weapon includes bombs, it could be rockets, it could be machine gun. Out of these three, the one that causes most damage is a bomb, because it has a very wide area of effect. Then the next one maybe is the rocket. It has a smaller radius of effect. Then the next one is a gun. So why a pilot doesn't want, he has fear that he's going to affect people and he's only listening, he most likely is going to use his machine gun.
That's a very good point,
yes.
Because the report actually suggests that they died in a hail of bullets.
So probably they used a machine gun.
Right.
Using a bomb, it increases the area, and in that area you could hit a farmer, you could hit some children. So this I just take you through to some of the things.
That's a very, very, very enlightening. But in this instance, though, obviously you weren't there, but you have an idea of how these things work. In this instance, there were hostages. We were told that 26 of them escaped, yes. But we don't know yet whether some of them died.
It's a possibility. It's a possible. Like I told you, the good thing, unfortunately, we've had other incidents where we hear almost equal number of bandits killed with equal number of innocent civilians, or even higher. That is a very bad market day for the Nigerian Air Force. But in this one, from all sources, and mind you, even being a military officer, honestly, when such things happen, I do not rely 100% on what I hear from the military. I try to cross-check my information from independent sources. So far, like what we hear before, we didn't hear there are high collateral damage. So even if they are aware, because I get where this pessimism is coming, how do you hit only bandits? You didn't hit this. But even if they were there, I'm ready to stick my neck and say this time around, the collateral damage must have been very low. Which again, like I said, in the law of armed conflict, it doesn't say collateral damage must be zero. No.
But the intelligence in your sort of speculative analysis, the intelligence would have told the pilot and all those who are making decisions that there are hostages there.
Yes.
Right, because it's interesting that President Buhari has been meeting representatives of the victims of the Kaduna train abduction, saying that he doesn't want, they were appealing for him to sort of intervene and so on, and he was saying that he doesn't want to use lethal military force in freeing the remaining kidnapped victims. Yet force was used in Kaduna State to free some victims there and to eliminate these bandits or criminal gangs or whatever. What do you make of that?
Circumstances and context. You get the point? It is, like I said, what the Air Force got over these people, it hardly ever happens. Where do you have people concentrated in one place at a particular time and then hit it? Sometimes don't get such a clear target. So the point I am making, circumstances. The pilot will decide what the circumstances is. Do I have a clear target to hit? If he doesn't have a clear target, sometimes he even have to cancel the effect. I don't know the sitting arrangement between the bandits here and the terrorists. But what President Buhari said is also applicable. You know, saying that you lose air power. I've had people saying Capt bomb them, kill everybody. With due respect, if my mother is there, or with due respect, if your mom is there, you wouldn't talk of Capt bombing. Because what you are saying is, and in fact, even if you say Capt bombing, it is part of the attack that is called indiscriminate attack. The law of armed conflict does not allow, you must take necessary precaution. After taking the necessary precaution, if you still have collateral damage, you have a point because you have taken all. So when you say Capt bombing, bomb everywhere, it's really not feasible. And in any case, what is the purpose of the operation? The purpose of the operation is to get these people out safe and secure. If you go and say you just go and bomb the place and let ever, so definitely when somebody is holding hostages, he has advantage on his side. And now it depends. What makes these bandits in the case of this, and what makes it even more difficult is that they are staying in an open forest. If you read all the history, because we study these things, of where hostages were sprung through military action, you'll find that invariably the successful ones, in any case, in general, you have a 50-50% chance of success, no matter how well trained you are. And this particular case is complicated because the people are not holed up in a building. If they were in a building, there are tactics you could use. Cut off water supply, cut off light, maybe throw some incapacitating gas into the building. But these people are out in the forest. We don't even know. Do they keep these hostages in one group, or do they scatter them? Depending on their you know, on the way they think. Some people, they know this is that there could be an attack. They could separate them into different groups. So how do you hit these 4 or 5 areas to? So definitely, it's something that will take time. But the only assurance, we always use, statistics, even though we may not always be right. 80% of hostage incidents, they end up in negotiation and people get freed one way or the other, whether it is paying by ransom, because now we are talking of human life. We may not necessarily put too much emphasis on where they were released. So that is just what I have to say.
Well, this has been an education, and I'm very glad that you were able to tell us about this and to share the benefit of your enormous experience with us. That's the National Security Consultant, Policy Analyst, and former Air Force Group Captain Sadiq Shehu. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.